Now, as you know, we started with 1978, and because that's the year I was born, I'm just going to quick review it. You've probably already seen it, so you know what we're doing here. But for those of you who are new, we went 78, 88, 98. Now we're up to 2008, and we're going to review the cinematic, and I will not say this ironically, as I've probably said in the past, masterpiece, Cloverfield. Directed by Matt Reeves, who this is not the first movie he directed, but it's pretty close. It's his first real big budget movie. He had directed kind of an indie comedy with David Schwimmer and Gwyneth Paltrow called Pallbearer a couple years before. It's a nice little indie comedy. It's when David Schwimmer was still he was on Friends, but trying to prove like he was more than Friends, but whatever. That's another review for a different time when we're not talking about Halloween. But where Matt Reeves gets his bones later on is that after Cloverfield, he goes on to direct Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for Planet of the Apes and the upcoming Batman movie. So this man knows a thing or two. Written by Drew Goddard, which is also a name that I think we all know, because he directed Cabin in the Woods, Bad Time at El Royale, and then a lot of episodes of The Good Place. He wrote a lot of Buffy, Angel, Alias, Lost, The Martian, Daredevil, produced a lot of all that. And then the biggest of the big, this movie was produced by J.J. Abrams. I don't think we need to give his bona fides. You know that man. That's just a name that gets dropped and everybody just goes, biggest name drop in the room. So this movie stars Mike Vogel, who some of you might know as Barbie from Under the Dome, and is more than likely how I will refer to him throughout the movie, because that's how I know him. Jessica Lucas, who went on to do Gotham and the remake of Evil Dead. Lizzie Kaplan, who I think is a name that's bigger, so I didn't really write anything. People know who she is. T.J. Miller. Oddly enough, this was like his first film. I think he had done a bunch of TV at this point, but because I remember when I went and saw it, this is also one of the only movies on the list that I've actually seen in the theater. But T.J. Miller obviously has gone on to do a lot of really good stuff. We won't talk about some of the other stuff that he might or might not be involved in. Then there's Michael Stahl David, who's kind of the main actor of the movie. His character name will be Rob. Don't recognize him, but he is a working actor. I looked up his IMDb, and he was a lot before and a lot since. So you've definitely encountered him. And then Odette Usman, who now is she's married, so now she's going by Odette Annabelle. Odette Usman is this random actress who every time I see her, I'm like, where do I know her from? I have a mental block against her for some reason. I mean, she's an actress, so she's very attractive. But every time I see her, I'll walk in and be like, what's the first thing she's ever done? Who is this? And it's just this mental block against her. The wife was watching a movie recently with her in it called You Again. And I'm like, man, she's like nothing. Like, who is this person? And then I looked her up and I was like, oh, she was in Supergirl. She was in this. She was in that. She was in Cloverfield. I was like, how do I've seen her in like all of these things, but for whatever reason, can never remember her. This movie is a departure from any of the ones that we've done so far. This is a found footage. It's not your typical studio film. It's one of the bigger budget found footage films. I didn't do a lot of breakdown into found footage. Everybody knows that one of the bigger ones clearly was Blair Witch Project, and this comes out a few years after that. But it is... this takes found footage and uses it in a different way altogether. So, I think at this point we need to talk about the marketing of the movie. So we'll skip over some of this stuff and we'll come back to it. But the marketing of the movie, there was a lot of kind of, because it was J.J. Abrams, and J.J. Abrams was and still is really hot. There was a lot of secrecy about the film. Apparently, every one of the actors was hired without actually knowing what movie they were going to be in. They were all given fake scenes or scenes from other movies and auditioned that way. So when they all set up, Lizzie Kaplan actually thought she was going to be in a romantic comedy. So little did she know that at some point she was going to explode. Spoiler for that movie. For that later on. But there was a lot of cross-marketing. There was a brand of slushy called Slusho that they had used in Alias that was used on this movie. There was some things from Lost that were used in this movie. J.J. Abrams really kind of linked a lot of his universe together. He kept it pretty quiet and really built the suspense. I think 2008, obviously, the internet was a thing, and it was working, and it clearly built. It wasn't quite to the toxic cesspool that it is now, but it was getting close. But he used a lot of viral marketing and used a lot of things that I think movies are using now. It does, as much as I hate Blair Witch Project, it does share a lot of the same DNA with kind of the marketing of like, ooh, what is this? What is that? Obviously, you couldn't necessarily try to hide it and pretend like this was real because it is about a monster attacking New York City. And that's not something that ever happens. So it's not like you can be like, well, out in the woods in West Virginia, these 3 kids were so annoying that somebody killed them, Right. So, but there was a lot of, and actually one of the websites that they used, where you had to you found the website and then there was a password that you could find online. That website's actually still up. And with that password, you can actually still access all the videos. It really doesn't help you further on down the, understanding the movie, but it's kind of cool. But it's also very interesting that somebody's still paying the bills, 13 years later to keep that website up and going. So the movie begins. We have it's showing us that it's some sort of DOD FBI file, kind of starting right away with a mystery. But then we cut to alternating scenes between 2 couples, kind of doing a little bit of a character development. Then we are realizing that some of the footage is from couples from a month ago and some of it's from today. The today couple is getting set for a going away party where one of the members of the a month ago couple is getting ready to move to Japan. We have Theo Rossi and Ben Feldman do some cameos. Theo Rossi being Juice from Sons of Anarchy and Ben Feldman being Superstore. They're in it Ben Feldman's in it for like 13 seconds. Theo Rossi's in it for about 15. It's more just like, wow, that's right, I didn't know those guys were in it. They've become famous since this movie. 18 minutes, 24 seconds into the movie. You're about almost 20 minutes in before you're like, wait, what is going on here? What you don't even really know what movie it is you're watching yet. Is it a going away party? Like, what kind of, there's some people that are upset and some people that are, but now at 1824, we finally get to the point where we're like, wait a minute, something's happening here. We're in New York. It's impossible to ignore the fact that now this movie is supposed to be taking place at in 2008. So it's impossible to ignore the fact that 9/11 happened. I think a lot of people at the time when this movie came out were kind of mad at it because they said they were abusing 9/11 imagery to really promote the movie. I remember going to see it and really kind of pushing back on that idea. Now watching it 20 years later from 9/11, I see some of the controversy, but I also don't see it as a like using it to sell the movie or using it as a bad thing. There's a lot of exposition and a lot of character growth in that first 20 minutes. Really using found footage in a way that I don't see effectively used in a lot of other ways. Because if you're at a wedding or at a going away party and there's the guy with the camera saying, "Hey, say something about the character," like you're also saying something about yourself as much as you're saying something about the character. So it kind of builds an idea of who these people are, and you're also narrowing down a cast of 30 or 40 people down to your main six, real quick, kind of seeing who they keep showing over and over again. There's a massive explosion that leads to panic, some power outages. Everybody runs up to the roof to see what's going on, and you see things exploding off in the and just about then, the head of the Statue of Liberty comes flying into the screen and starts destroying everything. This might be something different than just explosions or terrorism, because also there's some giant claw marks on the Statue of Liberty head. You see something in the background. Now, so the whole thing is TJ Miller is holding the camera as he's supposed to be the one going around getting all the testimonials for the party. Then when the group, like everybody starts running out to the street, everybody's got to run away because something's happening. Everybody, you hear the word terrorism thrown around a couple times, and then in the distance you hear some noise and you see something. Now, when you go back to the 70s and you get Jaws or Alien, the idea that you don't see the monster right away, and in fact we'll get to it, I'll mark through as we go along, where you actually, I think it builds the tension and really kind of focuses in where like you don't know what it is. You don't know any more about what's going on than the characters on screen do, because you only know what TJ Miller's camera catches. So in the distance you catch something weird going between buildings. And then, the characters actually go back and watch it and they're all like, "What was that? What was that?" Some more skyscrapers fall. Everything is going. So everybody's like, "We got to get out of here," and they start running towards a bridge. Now, we're 30 minutes into the movie. We think everybody's going across the bridge, but all of a sudden a tentacle or a tail or something whips down on the bridge, and Barbie is gone. So wait a minute, one of our main characters is now done. We're 30 minutes into the movie. We still don't know what's going on. And then another, I think, brilliant usage of the found footage is the looting of New York immediately starts, because, that's just what humans do. There's a monster attacking the city, or some terrorism attacking the city. Let's go loot the electronics store. Well, the electronics store happens to have the news on the TVs. And so they use the ability to show, like, the modern day news that wouldn't lose broadcast right away, and have helicopters showing, like, something is happening here. There's more than just, more than what you would think is happening is going on. Now we're 31 minutes in. The military's now shown up. So, we have a very interesting narrative usage of found footage in a way that, like, fast forwards the story, and that doesn't require us to spend a lot of exposition. You can just watch a couple seconds of him showing you the news. So Rob, our main actor, has learned. Oh, important to note. We should go back. The girl that he was in love with, Beth, the actress whose name I can never remember, left the party early on. So she's already at her apartment. He now receives a phone call that says, "Hey, I'm trapped in my apartment. Something's going on." He has to go get her. So now the group that was 5 is down to 4, and these 4 are now heading across town in the middle of a monster attack to go save this guy's kind of girlfriend. That this is where like sometimes like questionable things happen to make movie, go on. And like I said, we're also like, we're 30 something minutes into it, and we're beginning to question why these people are not just taking off running. Like, leave the city. Like, who? I mean, yeah, okay. It's my wannabe girlfriend is on the other side of town, but there's clearly a monster attack here. But you're also wondering, why is T.J. Miller continuing to film? Because at first it's I'm at a party, then it's I want to document the terrorism. Now that it's a monster thing and you're into complete shock of like just survival, I think it's kind of becomes his security blanket. He is clearly in shock because as the movie goes on, you just hear him babble and ramble, and I think he makes some decisions to get the camera in a way that you're like, why would he continue to do that? And I think it's because psychologically, like, that camera has become his security blanket. And also, it's obviously the only way we would know what's happening. We head down into the subways where we meet the little creatures that have fallen off the big creature. We still don't know what this creature is. We still haven't really seen it. These little creatures show up and they start trying to bite people and try to eat them. We're not 100% sure what's going on. So during the attack on them walking through the subway, Lizzie Kaplan is bitten. And that's important to note for the exact reason that we've already ruined earlier when we said she exploded. So, everything just keeps flowing. It keeps going. Once it starts, the movie just keeps pumping. They actually show T.J. Miller on screen, and you realize you hadn't actually seen him on screen in well over half an hour, which is very interesting considering he's like one of the main stars of the movie. Like, he's just, like, you hear his voice a lot. So, in the interest of, rather than just explaining the movie scene by scene, we'll kind of skip over some stuff here. And so, Marlena / Lizzie Kaplan explodes. Now, they do that in a way that, like, you don't really see what's going on. Everything is happening in the movie, not necessarily in real time, because overall, at the end of the movie, they explain, like, the whole attack started about 7 to 8 hours before the end of the movie. But so there's things that are going on that you don't realize, because obviously you only know what the characters know, and you don't have one of those just crazy, like, Deus Ex Machina, like, show up and be able to explain everything and save the world at the end of the day. So the military informs our group that the hammer down protocol is about to happen. They don't really say what it is, but come on, it's the military, and they're saying if you're not here by this time, it's going to be very bad. It's not too hard to imagine that means the military is fully committed to nuclear bombing New York City. But this Rob guy is intent on going to save girl whose name I can't remember. They get to her apartment and it's leaning on another apartment. Now again, at this point, most normal people go, well, time to move on with our life. But love makes us do stupid things. So they walk up 47 flights of stairs in the building that's not leaning, climb over. Somehow she's also still alive while her building's been leaning and she's stuck on some rebar for like 6 or 7 hours. Suspension of disbelief is often a big thing when it comes to movies. A movie that features a giant screaming dinosaur of some kind is no less one that we have to also suspend our disbelief on. At 1 hour, 1 minute and 45 seconds, we get the best sighting of the monster yet. It's only like a 1 hour and 24 minute movie. There's so it really, like I said, but going back to Jaws or Alien, like that allowing you to build what it is in your head makes it scarier or makes it more tense than if it was, they just kept showing it to you from minute one. There's been a character hanging out the whole time that I have not spoken of. Jessica Davies or Lily. So the four of them, you've got TJ Miller, Rob, his girlfriend, and Lily get to the site. They put Lily in one helicopter and then tell the other three, you have to wait, and then she disappears. So to the best of our knowledge, of the original group of people, she's the only one who survived. Because the next three get on the helicopter only to be once again attacked by the monster. But somehow miraculously survive being attacked by the monster and a helicopter crash in Central Park. Because, again, suspension of disbelief. So now we're about 7 minutes past that, and HUD, or TJ Miller, decides that he needs to grab his camera. So he turns around to grab it, picks it up, to turn around and immediately be confronted with being at the foot of the creature, and we get absolutely the best view of the creature of the movie, only for HUD to be eaten by the monster. Rob and Lily, for some reason, decide they have... No. Rob and Beth. I wrote that down wrong. Lily's gone. She fucked off. She's alive. Grab the camera, run under a bridge, and then you don't see anything that happens, but you hear it. You hear the sirens go off. You hear everything. And basically you now know that Central Park, that part of New York, has been bombed. We don't know if the creature killed Rob or it was the nuclear bomb that killed Rob. Actually, we're not 100% sure that Rob's even dead. But it would be hard to imagine that, given that the creature was right there at the place where they were also dropping, who knows how many bombs, that they managed to live through that. Really what it comes down to is I love this movie. It's the most effective use of found footage that I think I've ever seen. Big monster movies are some of my all-time favorites. Like, I love the Godzilla stuff. They're, the tons of bad choices that the characters make are where you get the outcome of the movie. I think in reality, most people would have been like, we got to get on out of here, or they would have been so terrified they would have never left their apartment in the first place. I think, you make tons of bad choices, which makes for movies. I'm not sure in the hands of other people than the three guys who were involved that the found footage can work with kaiju. Because it's such, with Godzilla, with King Kong, with Mothra, with, Pacific Rim, you name the giant monster, like, you need to see the giant monster attacking and fighting the city. It took some really intelligent planning, some really smart thinking to make Cloverfield work. Because I think had you just put some, random people or, certain directors who want to direct DC movies, named Zack Snyder, I don't think they have the deft touch to really pull this off. It makes sense. It works in ways that it shouldn't. This genre should not work in found footage. This genre should only work with like Blair Witch Project or your smaller horror films. I think maybe, I don't want to see it, but I think maybe you could get away with like a Friday the 13th in found footage. But, it works because they planned it out and were meticulous about it. It has launched a couple sequels. You have Cloverfield 10, which I think the interesting thing about the sequels is that it's both of the sequels that have happened are very different than Cloverfield. They're not found footage. They're not, Cloverfield 10 is a very claustrophobic kidnapping movie where you don't even really know that it's a sequel to Cloverfield until like the end of the movie. um, it's good. I watched Cloverfield Paradox just recently to get myself in the mindset again. Again, through 95% of this movie, except for the fact that it's called Cloverfield Paradox, you don't know it's a sequel. It kind of gives you an idea of where the monster came from, though. They did announce, but they've announced it multiple times, there is supposed to be a straight actual sequel to Cloverfield that they're working on, but who knows? They've said they're going to do it for years. One of the things that I did notice that was very interesting about Cloverfield was that they classified the monster as an infant or kind of like a wild animal. Like, so they not until Cloverfield Paradox, they didn't really even say where the creature came from. But it's not like Godzilla like is a fully grown adult, kaiju that just shows up and has an agenda. Where this monster just shows up and it's scared. It doesn't know, it doesn't understand the world that it lives in, which is why it's is a little more random and a little bit more, kind of scattershot. I will say that it has a pretty cool soundtrack for a movie that has little to no music in it. The party scene has some really good music. So, as we've discussed with some of the other movies, I don't know how this movie fits in to the decade as well as some of the other ones did. I mean, we discussed how well the other movies fit into the decade that it came out of. That could be more of a function of not really knowing how to define the 2000 to 2010, the aughts. So it's really hard to define what the movie is that sets it apart. I do think though it's why we had a bunch of big monster movies a couple years later with a couple Pacific Rim movies, and now Godzilla's made a comeback, because it had been about 10 years between Cloverfield and the last, that really awful Matthew Broderick Godzilla movie. There was a King Kong movie in there, but I don't know where King Kong fit. I know King Kong is technically a kaiju, but he's kind of a different animal altogether. I don't really see him as the same giant monster as I do Godzilla and the whatnot. I think the found footage really helped sell this movie in a way that like Matthew Broderick's Godzilla did not. Yeah. Other than it just being a terrible movie. Really quick, Rotten Tomatoes has it at a 78 for critic and 68 at audience, which is weird. Normally it's the other way around. Critics normally hate these kinds of movies and the audience loves it. I don't know why the audience score is so low on this movie, other than some people just have an inborn hatred of found footage. IMDb has it at a 7.0. I went with the simple, as we've discussed, I've gone with the simple 5 out of 5 scale. This one I'm giving 5 out of 5. Highly recommend this movie. Now that I've completely spoiled it, go watch it, have fun with it, enjoy it. And that has been our 2008 segment of Through the Decades of Horror.